Hello, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of Active Breath, the MVM Miller Voice Method podcast. I am one of your hosts. My name is Kyle Cameron. I am the director of the MVM Academy and a certified Miller Voice Method teacher. And my co-host is here. Say hello, Scott.
Hello, Scott.
How you doing today?
I was taking a shower and I was thinking, should I be more nervous than I am for this show? Is it? Am I?
Just broadly?
Yeah, maybe I should be. I'll work on that.
Oh, you'll work on getting more nervous.
Yes, I'll work on getting myself a little bit more in the state of something. Confusion? What would it be? What makes us nervous?
Well, that's an excellent question, and I think that we should talk about it with our lovely guest for today. I would like to introduce my dear friend, a fellow certified Miller Voice Method teacher. She teaches at NYU through the Atlantic Theater Company in the Atlantic Acting School, has taught there for many years, and is a wonderful MVM teacher. Ladies and gentlemen, and all other listeners, welcome Katie Honaker.
Hi.
Hi, Katie.
Hi. How are you?
I'm so excited that you're here.
Me too. And I'm nervous to be here. So, Scott, you can have some of my nerves if you like.
I'll take it. I love nervous.
We'll share.
Yes.
Yeah. So before we get into all that, let's take a little moment and do our little check-ins. A reminder to our listeners, this is a practice that we often have in our classes and our meetings. It's just a way to sort of allow folks to speak what's on their mind, what's on their heart, where people are coming from. It's a bit of an equalizer. Typically, everybody gets about the same amount of time, so we'll each take a minute or so. We won't be super hard on the timer here. Would anyone like to go first?
I'll go first. I'm going to go first. My headspace is very full with all of the things that are scheduled for me and that have been scheduled for me, just in terms of teaching work. A lot of like 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. days and beyond.
Oof.
In multiple days in a row. So I find that I am feeling a little depleted, but in the rooms when I'm doing the things, I don't feel that. I think it's just sort of the aftermath, like coming down off of that. So I'm now looking for ways to replenish myself. One of those is going to see the theater, which I have done quite a bit. And I'm also going to take a painting class on Tuesday, which I hope will fill my cup. And that's it.
That is so exciting. I can't wait to see your paintings. Have you ever painted before?
Oh, yes. Yeah. That's what I used to aspire to be. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, wow.
The
Didn't know that.
podcast, man. The place where we learn new things about our dear friends who we've known for a very long time. Incredible.
Yeah.
Scott, you want to go or is it me?
I can go. I'm a little distracted because as Katie was talking, I'm staring out the window and from where the apartment is, I can see the street, and we're on the 3rd floor, and there's this little kid, I don't know, maybe 3 foot tall, like really, really small, carrying a little bag, standing on the edge, on the street, standing on the edge, waiting for the cars to pass. And I'm looking around for the parent, and I'm like, where's the parent? And there's no parent. And then the kid just went across the street and went into his house, I guess, into the apartment building across. I was thinking about that because I was speaking to my cousin yesterday and explaining that in New York, the kids, because one of them's going into high school, and she was fully expecting me to say, like, I walk the kid to school or something like that. And I was like, no, in New York, at 10 or 11 years old, your kid is riding the subway alone or the buses alone. And I swore when my other friends had kids that age and my kids were smaller, I was like, that's crazy. You let the kid, et cetera, et cetera. But that's kind of what we do here in New York. So it's, we've lost the kids a couple times, but it's a great place for your kids to get lost in New York City on the subway because, it feels like people watch out. The adults start to kind of intrinsically watch out for the kids. Or maybe that's just a story I'm telling myself, probably. But anyway, yeah, that's where my head is at. Now it's back.
Funny. Here we are. Yeah. I feel a little stuffed up, so I feel like that's reflecting in my voice a little bit. So I feel a little self-conscious about that. I was just sweeping. I have a friend coming to stay for a couple of days. You know him. His name is Satya. Satya was one of my classmates at grad school. And he has become a bicoastal human who is now sort of back and forth between LA and New York. But he's coming back to shoot his first short film that he wrote and will be directing, and that I will be featured in alongside his mother. Spoiler alert.
Ooh.
So that's going to be really fun. We're going to shoot that this week, but he's going to stay with me for a couple of nights until he gets back in his apartment. So I was tidying up. And as often happens when I'm tidying up, especially for a guest to come over, I think about my mother. Because my mother was a person who would never have guests over unless the place was tidy, but also just kind of always kept the place tidy. And that drove me crazy probably when I was younger. And now it's sort of like, it's like a nice place where I can encounter her and be like, oh, hey mom, the floors are clean. The windows are clean. The bathroom is clean. I understand why you loved this so much, because I love this. I love to have a clean house.
Hey, I have
folks come over. So
I have a question about that.
Yeah, please,
Kyle. So is there a difference between like tidy, meaning, everything in its place, and clean, like there's no dust or dirt? Do you differentiate between the two?
Absolutely.
Talk to me. What is it? What's the difference?
I tend to be more of a clean person than a tidy person. So my objects will gather and clutter around my desk, around the chair beside my desk. So like that's part of having a clean house. But for me, like it was more important to have we have a cat. We have a lovely little old cat who's aging and shedding everywhere, and we love him to death. His name is Fritz. He is the best boy in the whole world. But he leaves these little dust bunnies all over the place. So for me, having a guest coming over means the toilet is clean, the dust bunnies are gone, the mirror is clean.
Right.
So for me, that's the clean stuff. And then on top of that, I'll do my best to tidy up. But sometimes that requires like reorganizing things, which can be a slightly different and often more anxiety-inducing project for me. Cleaning is easy, tidying is hard for me. Whereas like my partner, I think, tends to be the opposite.
Yeah, I'm the opposite as well. Like I just need things organized. I don't really care if there's a layer of dirt on it. And my wife is just the opposite. There could be lots of clutter, but as long as the clutter is clean, we're in good shape.
Yeah.
What about you,
what
Katie?
are you, Katie?
Yeah.
I'm definitely a tidier, and my husband is definitely more of a cleaner. I will say that.
Interesting.
Sounds like division of labor is okay across the board.
Yeah,
for us.
maybe that's one of the things, like we kismetly find each other, right? Our perfect match. You have to have a cleaner and a tidier.
Yeah,
for sure.
So anyway, that's kind of where I'm coming from today. Katie, I want to ask you, you have been a student of The Voice for a long time. When would you say you started studying voice?
I probably, when I was back in Nashville, had a little taste of it in different places and different classes, but I didn't really have any real understanding of it until I came to do training at Atlantic, which was in 2000. So while I was in training, I was introduced to the Chuck Jones methodology. Did that for a couple of years. And while I was in school, I struggled mightily with all kinds of things related to my voice. And so as I graduated, I was
I'm curious about that.
Yeah, I was like, I haven't quite figured it out. When emotions would get high or stakes would get high or I was yelling, there was a lot of squeezing, and I just couldn't get my instrument to regulate. And then soon after that, I just started working with people doing theater, and felt like I kind of had to figure it out in the moment on the fly. And then I started teaching. And as I was teaching, I was losing my voice probably about once or twice a year, just from use of the
Really?
voice. Yeah, had a lot of just probably undiagnosed constriction in those places. And also I had never taught before. So I was really feeling out of my element. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. And that created a lot of tension in my throat and a lot of chest pinning and all of those things. And I was doing, where did I find out? Oh, yes, I was getting headshots done. And the headshot photographer's boyfriend was there, which was Chris Keogh, and we were just chatting about teaching and all kinds of things. And Chris said, "You should take a class with my friend Scott." And I was like, okay. Oh. So I did that. In a weekend workshop. I think this was around 2010 or 2011 in the spring. And it was mostly just out of, I guess, a little bit of curiosity, but also I was like, losing my voice a couple of times a year is really becoming problematic. It's a little scary.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, oh, this thing is my lifeblood. It's my instrument, my art. And I'm worried about it. So I came to that first workshop, and the thing that I experienced on that Friday night, which I had never encountered before, was circle talk with a group of people I did not know. I didn't know one person in there. And Scott and JP were both there. And I can't even remember how many people were in this workshop, but it was this circle talk experience where when I had walked in, I was very nervous for sure, but I also had a habit and a history of needing to be the best and needing to be liked the most and needing to be seen in that way as like skilled and all of those things. Mm-hmm. And through that circle talk, every bit of that dropped away. And what I realized was now I feel like whatever I do tomorrow is fine. And I'm actually going to be able to show up tomorrow for the full day of work, scene work, and do whatever happens, as opposed to needing it to be about something else, which I had not really realized until that moment. And was like, oh, well, now we've all had this experience together, and now I feel free to come in here and be open and really do all the work, which I had not experienced before. So that's where that all began.
Wow. Huh. What do you think it was about the circle talk that opened that up for you?
I think it was that erasure of status. It was, everybody had the same amount of time. Scott spoke also. JP spoke. It wasn't like us and them. And there was no real agenda to that other than Scott's curiosity. So it didn't feel like I had to talk about anything, but that I was allowed to talk about anything I wanted in whatever way I wanted. Right. And that it felt okay to do that. So, yeah.
That's really interesting.
That's incredible.
I what comes to me as you're saying that, Katie, is that sense of gatekeeping, who's the gatekeeper? And, obviously it's on some level, it's always ourselves, even if we want to project it onto somebody else or, invest it in somebody else, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't mean that necessarily in the pejorative sense, this negative like gatekeeper. It could be your hero, your favorite teacher. They still, and their approval becomes the gatekeeping. But we're the ones. Even if the so-called gatekeeper asks us to give it, we are the ones who eventually give it. So it is ours to give. And I wonder about the circle talk in the sense that the remover of the gatekeeper externally, right, potentially leaves one with the realization, realization with the fact that no one wants your gatekeeping, like that it's yours, and you don't actually even need it. There's no gate to keep, right? There's no gate. There's just an experience, and there's just a moment, and there's just information, and there's just an attempt. And from that attempt, you'll get more information, and you'll have to do something with it, because that's the way the organism is built, whether you're conscious of that or not. And then you'll hopefully make another attempt with that experience, and on and on. But there's no real separation, no gate between the two, actually.
Yeah. One thing it's interesting to sort of look at it from this, a bit of like reverse perspective of being the so-called teacher in the room, which again, I've never really necessarily even thought of myself as that.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember Scott saying, yeah, I'm more like a researcher. I was like, yep, that's it. That I can do. I can be a researcher. Maybe I can't necessarily be so much teacher. But when people work in class, I find it very interesting, the response. Someone will do work, and then they feel this instant need to look at me to see or get the approval, like you just described.
Yeah.
And in that,
how did I do?
Yeah. And I really love specific language that I've learned doing this work, which is not even to say, how was that? Or how did that feel? Which is what I used to do. How was that for you? Is to say, well, by watching you, I started to get curious about these things. And I'm curious about your experience of those things based on what you just did. And there often are moments of the students thinking or saying out loud, I don't know. And I always use Scott's phrase of like, well, if you did know, what would you say?
Now you've given it away.
That we all have taken on that phrase.
Oh, sorry. I know, but it's really, I'm just obsessed with it. I'm obsessed with saying that to people. You do know. You just described it, absolutely perfectly. So trying to build their own trust in themselves. And again, like you just described, what I think it is, you've been your own gatekeeper, but now what you can say is, I have permission to XYZ. Nobody has to give it to me, but I can continually give it to myself. And I can do that in the room as well, with a healthy dose of compassion and an attempt to get rid of so much of the judgment that comes along with just living life. And I remember that was one of Scott's early assignments for me, which was, by that time, right after the workshop, I was doing private sessions with Scott. And he said, your assignment this week is to move through the world and notice judgment and see if you can not judge. And I was like, I don't know about that, but okay. And I really was seeing a lot of just my judgment about other people, which then, of course, was underneath all that, just the judgment of myself and lack of compassion, quite frankly. And then I was like, oh, wow, okay. So I can relens my world view, and I can relens my perception of myself in it, which truly was life-changing, among other things. I mean, that I do remember one session with Scott where we were chatting and talking, and Scott had said, in a quiet moment after I probably had rambled for quite a bit, he said something along the lines of, what I noticed is that you talk a lot around the thing that you're trying to talk about, but you never really get right to the point. You're not very direct. And I was like, silently stunned, and also like, wow, yes, that's true. And I agree. And the way that Scott said that to me did not have any judgment in it. It was an observation that I actually had space to take in rather than be reactive in that moment, which I also couldn't believe. And I was like, I think this is the thing. And if I could do that for somebody else, then I'd feel pretty good about my day.
What's your experience of that, Scott? That one of the things that Katie said that's sort of grabbing me is Scott made this observation without any judgment.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Like what,
Well, I think there's two parts to it. There's the curiosity and the thing we talk about, which is that you can't authentically be curious if you think you know something, or if you think you know the answer. It really has to come from and really kind of desperate curiosity. Like, I really need to know something I don't know. But you really have to believe you don't know something. Like, that's an important place to start, and to some degree be okay in the sense of you feel safe in that unknowing, which is kind of counterintuitive primarily as an animal, right? When we're in states of not knowing, everything in our nervous system wants to make us more alert, to pay more attention to the information so we can save ourselves on some level. But we don't have tigers chasing us anymore. Most of us, I certainly don't. So I can, even though I may feel uncomfortable and less secure with that non-knowledge, I've woken up enough the next day to know that just feels uncomfortable. It's actually not going to kill me. Right. So that's real data. That's really like confirmation, right? That's discomfort, but that's not going to harm me, right? And really discerning the difference between the two, like not knowing some information can potentially harm me, right? And so I'm trying to figure that out. And, years on this planet helps, and more experiences helps. And then the other thing is, once one's in that place and can come from that place of like, it's not going to kill me, it's okay that I don't know something. Even if I'm in the role of the quote unquote expert, it's okay that I don't know something. Then the next step is navigation. Then it's just like having language and conversations that are purely navigational. And what I mean by navigational is it's just orientation to a spot. And that's it, right? And that's where that observational information versus experiential information that Katie so beautifully just described in her teaching, right? Right. So from my navigation, I have this information, which you don't have access to because I'm observing you. But from your vantage point, navigation, you have access to the experience of that, which I don't have access to. Now, if we can collaborate in this investigation, now we have a whole lot of data to start to draw some next steps around. And so on some level, it's just very, dare I say scientific, very much, continuously in the state of investigation, as opposed to, I figured it out. Let me teach you about this. Let me tell you about my observation, which is, even as I say it out loud, it's kind of a funny thing, right? Let me tell you what I just learned about you. And that's supposed to be helpful. Yeah. I mean, when it's delivered that way, I think immediately it warrants defense, right? Because it doesn't make quite sense. Like, you're going to tell me about me? With that tone of voice, like with such assuredness, like, well, something's off here. Something just doesn't, it's not logical. It doesn't quite make sense. And I think that really, from the outset of that moment, that instigates a kind of defensiveness from the receiver, which makes sense. That defensiveness really makes sense. So it's everything. It's the way you go in. It's the tone you use, which is the expression, the authentic expression of your intentions and desires, right? And all that is, helpful with an active breath, right? Helpful with a kind of a flow state place, as opposed to, I figured this thing out about them. Okay, let me hold on to that. Let me hold on to that. Let me hold on to that. Okay, now I can fire it at them. It's a very different experience.
I'm wondering, Katie, if you have any experiences of being able to pay that forward to your students. Do you feel like you've had a moment to offer observations like that you perceive have hit them in a way that surprised them? Do you know what I mean?
Oh, I don't know about surprise, but I mean, I hope my attempt in rooms is, I've had a lot of really amazing, incredible teachers in my training over the years, so many. And eventually what I realized, who I wanted to be in that room was someone that I always wished that I had. And I guess I had it to some degree with certain teachers, but I really wanted to have a teacher in the room who could really see me and could really say to me, I see you. Here's what I see about you. In terms of this particular art form or this particular work, this is what you have that is really working for you in terms of this. And that's amazing. And you should know that about yourself. This is what's unique about you. And we have all of these other things that we can work on. What do you think? And make it a little bit more of like a fun place to play in. And again, not that I didn't have those experiences. I definitely did. But when I was first teaching, I was like, I don't know how to teach. I don't know. I've never taught anything before. They just asked me to do it and I just didn't say no. And there I was doing it. And it was terrifying and I felt a huge responsibility. And I was maybe just sort of mimicking what I had observed or experienced with other teachers, but I didn't feel like I was the teacher that I wanted to be in the room. Until about 7 years in, when I was first introduced to this work, and then I realized, oh my God, what a relief. I can actually go in the room and not know. And in fact, it might be better if I don't, because then something really exciting might happen for all of us in the moment, and maybe not. I think I also appreciated the notion that not everybody has to have the epiphany in the room with me. And maybe they don't. Who knows? Maybe they have it at home when they're doing their Walvi. I don't know. And that's okay too.
Yeah, it's really interesting talking about teaching in this field. And this gets into why you are doing the teacher certification, Scott, why so much of that process is about teaching how to teach. The people in this field and people in a lot of fields often become teachers because they are, to some extent qualified. They are to some extent subject material experts because they have acting training, they have voice training, whatever, but they're never taught how to teach. And I think you wanted to change that to some extent, right? With the teacher certification. Isn't that part of the DNA of what we're doing?
No, absolutely. Absolutely. I think I've said this in the previous podcast, but yeah, in the US, K through 12, you get trained, you get a license, you get a master's degree, you know what I mean? And then after, once you hit college and beyond, you don't need any kind of training as a teacher. You just, theoretically need to be a subject matter expert. And yeah, it's a big hole in I think in American education in the system. So yeah, and also I think too, if our mission is to get this research out to as many humans on the planet as desire to receive it, then that ain't gonna happen with a couple people knowing it, right? So it's got to, and not just in a sense of proliferation, like, okay, let's create 1,000 robots to deliver this product, but really more in the sense of evolution and relevance. So the more people you invite into the community with varied experiences, the more whatever that thing is, I think can evolve. And also, helps with the curse of a lack of perspective and the kind of, sense of, unscientifically, I'm going to say this, a sense of becoming like a sociopath, like really lacking perspective and empathy and availability of taking in information around you. The more insulated one becomes, the more that perspective can start to get, very narrow. So yes, it's about building skills and awareness through the lens of this research that we're doing, and it's also to somehow keep our feet on the ground and open to change. And as the brain and the body, we're all changing, and these cultures, these humanoids are advancing or not advancing or something. They're changing. Let's put it that way, right? All the time.
Yeah.
So
It feels like practicing what we preach to a certain extent too, being able to stay open in the moment. And like I have had experiences in class where you stop yourself and you go, I could have said that better. Let me try that again. Or you say, I actually don't know the answer to that question. Let's try it out. Approaching the room with that spirit of curiosity and doubt and uncertainty around my own expertise. And it still can feel really electric in the room. People really can be very surprised by it. Similarly to with the circle talk, the fact that if, so I taught the NYU second years alongside Katie a couple of years ago. She has a colleague who went and did a show out of town, and Katie put my name forth, and I got to teach some of her students, their students, for 4 months. And my first day, maybe second day, we did circle talk, and I remember these young people had done circle talk before, but it's such a surprising experience to have this new person who's the teacher, right? The expert in the room come in and just breathe and be present and talk about vulnerable stuff that they're going through. I think it really sets the tone that we are all practitioners. We're all trying to figure something out together. I might have a bit more experience with this particular exercise because I was taught it and you haven't been taught it. So I know what to look for, I know what the parameters are, but that doesn't mean that I'm better than you or that I'm, that I know more than you or something. It can be very affecting to the students for sure.
Yeah, I've been. Go ahead, Katie. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, it reminds me of seeing Scott teach with note cards, and I was like, what? This is what is happening? There, I see note cards with like notes on, and then I was like, oh, okay, that's actually very reassuring for me, especially in the beginning of it. I was like, I'm making some note cards for myself, and I'm going to let everybody see them and see me checking them and let that be okay for me and for them, which felt really nice.
Katie's note cards are formidable.
I have a whole stack.
I've seen the library. Yeah.
I'm making more.
Stack. Yeah, always more.
I love a note card.
Yeah. Yeah, it's this idea of with boundaries comes freedom, right? So if I don't know the boundaries, and part of my attention has to continuously keep checking for them, and if I do know the boundaries, which are, this is what we're going to do today, or what I'm thinking of doing today. We'll see if we get to it. Even those scant little, notes. Really helps in the sense of freedom. I was thinking of something else related, and I don't have this really clearly formed in my mind. I'm still trying to figure out how to articulate it in a way that's connected or coherent. I know what I mean when I say that. Maybe other people have that same sense of like, it's right there. It's just not like there. But the sense of how we are, how I'm thinking of Google search, I'm thinking of AI, I'm thinking of chat boxes, I'm thinking of information in the room. So you have two humans, and that's the information in the room. Let's say there's just two people in a room. They're having a conversation about something, even if one person's a subject matter expert, one person's a doctor, one person's a patient, whatever the dynamic is. But that's the information in the room. And before the technology, all this stuff came, that was kind of the information in the room. So you locked in with each other in a very different way because you were each other's kind of life support to the information that one was experiencing or trying to get at or trying to figure out. And now with the technology, it's like well, something unknown happens in the room, and almost immediately, if someone has some access to a device, they'll go to the device for the answer, for the quote unquote information, as opposed to staying in the interaction human to human. And also, right, for this quest for certainty. So again, when it's just two people shooting the crap with each other, like you may have a very strong opinion about something, but there's always an air of uncertainty when you're talking to another human that's going on that allows some space to actually ponder. Like, yeah, they were really adamant about that, but I don't know about, as you walk away, I don't know about that. Or while you're in the conversation, right? But then you get you have this technology, and you go to the technology and it's like, that's the fact. Right. I don't question this. This is what this says, or this is what my quote unquote tribe says, or my channel says. And so there's a relationship to that quest for certainty, which I wonder about, in a sense of like on the continuum of changing information, right? Certainty means I'm done with that piece of information, which again is not logical or organically the way we experience the world. So that seems a little bit off. And then there's, I'm going to kind of abandon you and go to this other thing as the source of whatever, truth or so I just wonder, as we've been doing this over the last, 2-3 decades, and our brains have been kind of conjugated more and more out of this way of relating to information, that so that's the quote unquote benefit, right? But what is the cost in the sense of human to human interaction? If I no longer know how to kind of stay with uncomfortably in the unknown with another human being trying to figure something out in the room, like that feels really appropriately wonky in the sense of how much life experience I've actually had doing it, right? And so it is really almost severely anti-human, right? It's literally, I don't need you for this. I'm going to go to the machine, right? And so in this kind of like sense of, we're creating AI. AI is going to kill us. AI runs these models, and the only solution for humans is elimination, which makes kind of sense if you think of humans as toddlers, in the sense of we're doing crazy stuff that's harmful for ourselves and the environment around us, et cetera, et cetera. But I wonder, in this kind of slow walk or fast walk towards anti-human, in the world of communication, is this just kind of another step towards it? And I think that's, again, that's the power circle talk. Like no one has a device. Everyone gets the same time. And we're just going to hold space. And the only information that's going to happen around us is here in these moments.
Can I say something about how that reminds me of, like, people talk about being present as actors, and I'm always curious about all the words that people use, and like be in the moment and be present. And what's interesting is if you're working with, say, two actors who are doing a scene, and then you're asking them to unseal their lips and breathe and really take in the other person. Maybe that's looking at them. Maybe that's not looking at them. Who knows? But I find that if they really, truly are in that moment, often their lines will go out of their heads because they are forced to really deal with something right then. And that startles them, and they almost always stop and break out of it, which I'm fascinated by, because I would know that feeling of just being like, I don't know what I'm going to say, and now I'm here and everyone's looking at me and I'm stuck. And but getting your whole system used to what it feels like to a little bit continually be in those kind of I don't know moments, while trusting that all of the preparation you've done, memorizing, analysis, all the things will show up. But that requires a huge amount of trust and experimentation and willingness, I think. Can be scary.
Well, and that feeling of being looked at and being analyzed and being on the spot is also present information.
Yeah.
So it's like interesting that I'm trying to stay present to my partner and my breath and the experience of the scene. And then if something knocks me off balance, then this other piece of present information, which has been there all the time, suddenly becomes the primary focus. And it's like, oh, I'm nervous. I'm terrified. I don't know what to do. What do I do?
Yeah.
And I don't always know how to get out of that. I had an experience in a show about a year and a half ago, and I'm like editing on the fly. I'm like, what? How much should I say about this experience? We don't know who's ever going to hear this. This is a document forever. But I tried, and I went up on my line, and I did not know what was going to come next, and what was wild in the moment. There are other factors at play here, but I felt myself give up, and that's the thing that has stayed with me from that moment. And mercifully, my scene partner stepped in, saved us, got us back on track. But it was the experience of, well, I don't know what's coming next. And suddenly I've decided I don't care. I don't care. I can't save this. I'm not going to try. And that, well, like, what did I think was going to happen? Do you know what I mean? It was fascinating to watch that impulse and to continue to know that happened and sort of grapple with, that's the thing that we're always taught not to do. You got to keep going, right? Because you got to keep going. And I'm so grateful that my scene partner saved me. But yeah, I still need to process through what did I think was going to happen in that moment? Did I think we were all just going to like get up and walk away? Have you encountered people having that experience? Just the sort of the give upness of it?
Wait, is that are you saying give up can you explain that a little bit more? Are you saying that in a why bother give up, or how freeing give up? Like what's the context?
Oh, no, not in a sense of freedom at all. No, not in a sense of, well, I could do anything and it would be fine. No, very much the opposite. Very much I felt myself, there were circumstances, there were mental health things going on. 100%. It was not my best day, but it was very much like I let the rope go slack and I slouched in my chair on stage in front of, probably 150 people. I just thought, this isn't going to go anywhere. I can't save this. And I don't, and in this moment, I don't care. So I just stopped. And thank God he stepped forward, because what was I going to do? Was I going to walk off stage? That's just so fascinating to me that there was a parallel universe where just the show ended there.
But I think isn't that the difference between when we talk about the actor mind versus the character mind? And that is the Herculean challenge of acting is, there's the actor mind knows that you're just up there acting, and there's people watching, and there's a life going, there's other life going on, and then the character is supposed to be in this given circumstances, and the focus that it takes to stay in there. It sounds like your actor mind took over in that moment. But I wonder, I guess what I'm curious about is, because is that a version of the truth? I mean, did the version that I'm an actor acting and now I don't have the next thing did that just, without having the next line, did that just shatter the reality of the given circumstances for the character? And was the slumping and the dejection about failing the character? Or because on some level you forgot your line, so you are now in present information, right? That is the present moment that is happening in the actor's reality and the audience's reality of we came to see a play today,
Yeah.
Or was it the slump?
Yeah, I think that's kind of right. I think I dropped into actor mind. But so now I'm in the place that Katie's theoretical student is in, right? There's people looking at me, there's this, that, and the other, and that can lead to this heightened, tense, I might grip, I might grab my lower third, I might, whatever, all of these sort of symptoms of deer in the headlights, fight or flight kind of moment happened. And I felt that happen. And then I just felt it all fall away. And it just was like, okay, so here's the other piece of information that I think might make the story make a little more sense. I made an insane mistake during the intermission that night, which is I decided to read some of the reviews during intermission.
No, Kyle, no.
Yes.
You are
This is
fate.
Yeah, bonkers.
Duress.
And let me tell you, the reviews were mixed, and which didn't super surprise me. But there was one where where the reviewer devoted a paragraph to ripping me apart, and I was so shocked, so shocked by that. I was like, "Are you serious?" Like, so. I'm not saying it's a causal experience, but those are two data points that sit next to each other. I read the reviews in the dressing room on intermission, and then I came down and started to do my scene. And I think in the moment I thought, well, I guess I suck. And I guess this play is terrible and I'm awful in it. So, why bother fixing it? That's a data point that probably might explain a little bit where I was coming from.
Yeah, that is the actual, use of the definition that we use for duress, right? Anything that competes for your attention other than the task at hand.
Yeah.
And that's a healthy scooping of duress there you are dealing with. Right. And,
that reminds me of, it totally reminds me of, I feel like this is something I see in the classroom a lot, which is the stakes of that room itself. And maybe that's the teacher or just the fact that you're in a class and it's part of your grade or you want to do a good job, where all of your attention is on that thing, which is I want the teacher to say, give me good notes. I want the teacher to tell me that I've done good work. I feel a lot of pressure to do well. So the stakes live in the room instead of the stakes living in the actual event of that character or that person who's dealing with a thing that is right in front of them. So this thing of like attention shifting and task at hand and duress and payload and all these things was, that was another thing in all of this work where I thought, oh, this is helping me make sense of why my version of my warm-up. And the truth is that the Chuck Jones warm-up has evolved also. It definitely includes some integration using text in the warm-up, which, I maybe always was, and I probably just didn't notice it, but given who I was at the time. But I was like, oh, this definitely feels like athletic training, which I know it was born out of. But then I was like, right, because being in the theater is like our sport. That's our game. We've got to be able to go play the game. And how we're going to do that is in all these ways that we're going to try to mimic that, to get that, bridge that integration gap. And I was like, oh, well, that's really fun and really exciting and incredibly challenging. And let's go for it and see what happens.
Yeah, the integration work is so thrilling, where you get to fire on all cylinders and try and keep all those balls in the air. I remember Katie. So I shadowed Katie for a bit before coming in and teaching the students in her program, and we got to run the scene integration series with some of your second years. And I think you said that was the first time you had taught them that material.
Yes, that's true.
Because you typically traditionally teach more speech than voice, right? I'm
usually just the
which
speech
is a distinction
teacher.
we can, yeah. No, not just a speech teacher.
Primarily, originally.
Not to belittle the art of speech and elocution.
No, not at all.
We should talk about that at some point. What that distinction is, but
Sure.
But I remember watching your students go through 8 weeks of the scene integration progression.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that? What that experience was like, watching those students go through that?
Well, I think because at the time, having never taught it before And of course, I had all my notes in front of me, my cards.
That's note cards.
I was like, okay, just so you know, I've never done this, and I know you've never done it. And so we have to be game to do it and really commit to it and see what happens. And there was a lot of, I think what I discovered was that it shook up a lot of things, and not necessarily like that people were having light bulbs, but I think they were trying to sort of put it in relationship to the practical aesthetics technique that Atlantic teaches. And not to say that they're in conflict. I don't think they are at all. But I think because it's a brand new way of working. It's like, hey, look at the text in this way. Okay, let's get on our feet and we're going to do this thing. Okay, now we're going to try this thing. What kind of information is that giving you about this particular story or this particular scene? Or, given what just happened, now what do you feel like maybe you're interested in exploring, or what are you curious about, or what do you want to try in this work?
Yeah.
So a lot of space for play, a lot of space for experimentation without feeling like they had to necessarily present something to perform. And I found that pretty exciting. And I hope, I don't know for truth, but that they found it very freeing in many ways to, uncap possibilities in the moment in the room.
I think they did. My memory of them was watching a lot of growth in real time and sort of self-discovery. Like I remember there was one run of one of the scenes. It was two young women. I forget what the scene was. But they were really, I feel like the scene was slightly period maybe. And there was a bit of a heightened element of it. But in this one run, it was like the jelly brain or the free falling run or something like that. And they were both just kind of bonkers. Like it was a little bit clownish almost. It was sort of unfettered. It felt very present. I think their technique was holding up. They were staying in active breath. Lips were unsealed by and large. They were really responding to each other. And we got to the end of the scene and I remember being like, so is that the scene? Probably not. Like you probably wouldn't ever want to do it that way for an audience because it may not be in service of the story.
Right.
But would I watch those two people exist in that relationship all day long? Yes, absolutely.
Right. Yeah. Getting
to watch them experience what it feels like to respond to each other in real time rather than in their pre-planned rehearsal, I think that affected them and the way they might think of what performance will look like and feel like going forward. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. There is that sort of free-falling sense of, you cannot act your analysis. They know that, but I think it's, of course, you're on the edge of something that your whole body's system is telling you that you should stop and run. Everything that it feels like is like, well, this can't be right. It feels a little too scary and I might fall over or I might forget my line or I might, you name it, XYZ, that attentional thing. So again, coming back to the thing that I find useful about the training, which is that integration point. And scene integration is certainly an amazing, fun way to explore it. And to have sometimes having, I don't remember if we did this in our class, but having people with hands on ribs, following people around. I actually did that this week. There have been rehearsal projects. And I put my hands on someone's ribs and kept reminding them to unseal as they were in the scene and, sort of running around behind them, following them as they were moving through the scene. And I was like, yeah, this is fun. I'm having a good time. How dare I?
How dare you?
Yeah, a lot of it, we could devote a whole episode to scene integration, but I think a lot of it stems from really the professional world where you don't usually rehearse alone with your partner in the professional world.
Right.
Right,
nor would
exactly.
you want to because of whatever.
Yeah.
So, so it really takes that model and takes it out of kind of the historical education model where you rehearse a lot alone with your partner. You come in, you show it, you get some notes. Maybe you run it again. Maybe you don't. Maybe you just get notes and then, bring it back next week and you go away, et cetera, et cetera. We just found there's a lot of pitfalls, mainly around that sense of, people tend to be, we've been trained to be conflict averse. Like we try to not be in conflict, and that's done really well for the evolution of our society. But most plays are about people in conflict and trying to deal with it on some level. So, having us run these exercises in front of, the class, the teacher, which would be the director, whatever, just again mimics a lot of what happens in athletics, mimics what happens in the professional world. Your rehearsal is in front of other people. So, because, think of it. I mean, when I was learning how to act, we did a lot of, go home and rehearse with your scene partner. And you're kind of put in that impossible position of observational and experiential at the same time. While you're observing your scene partner as well, and probably critiquing your scene partner as well, and building up these like expectations. They need to give me something, all this like really weirdness starts to happen in one's mind that really has nothing to do with the task at hand or being moment to moment with the present information. And a lot of that stuff starts to grow and fester in those I'm alone with my scene partner rehearsals. So it's very helpful, we find, to see everything that's happening, and that kind of self-corrects itself, right? Like a lot of the stuff that you might do or start to think or pull in alone with your scene partner, you wouldn't dare think of doing that in front of other people. And so, some of that just takes care of itself, organically. So
I feel like that side rehearsing with your scene partner also fosters the idea that now I'm going to show up in class and show you what we did, show you what we discovered, what we figured out, which like, that's not completely without value, because to a certain extent, our job is to tell the story, and maybe we've discovered story beats that are worth hitting that we didn't discover before. Like, it's not meaningless, but it is fostering this idea of like, I'm going to show you this dead thing that we created the other day, and now it's, we're going to do the lifeless version of that,
right. and hope to get your approval of it. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. See how good it is? Look at this discovery I made. Isn't it amazing?
Yeah.
Well, we should do a whole episode on scene integration sometime. Maybe when the text transfusion book comes out.
Yeah, just finished that. Just handed it in to the publisher.
Ooh,
Exciting.
that's exciting.
Yeah. It starts the process, but it'll be a good 9 months before it's out. So, life.
Pay attention, fair listener. Watch for the book. It will come. It might not be called text transfusion anymore. Right. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Katie, I want to just touch on one more thing before we sign off here, and we'll just sort of glance at this, even though it's a tremendous part of your career. You are a voiceover artist.
Yes. Sometimes.
I'm curious. We'll talk more about voiceover in subsequent episodes. Maybe we'll have you back to share a bit more of your experience. But I'm curious if this work has affected the way that you approach voiceover.
For sure. I mean, I think it's the specificity of point of view. I think the thing that I keep thinking of, or that I've been thinking more and more of as time goes on, is my relationship to the language, my relationship. I'm in relationship with text. And what does that mean? And it has to be made to seem human. I mean, in the voiceover, mostly have done like commercial stuff or Fair Balance, which is talking about how all the drugs will kill you, which they probably will. But still, even in those moments, you have to be clear in a list of things, or if you're selling something, the point of view has to be that what they want everybody to know about it. So you have to look at the words and say, well, what in here does that? What word in here? And in what way will it be expressed to make that point clear? And the specs sometimes are all over the place. They'll be like warm and compassionate, like you're talking to a friend. And they use all kinds of language to talk about tone and things like that, character perhaps. And at the end of the day, you do have to take a look at it and see what's on offer and test out a few things in that way. So I like the experimental nature of that. I like the investigative nature of that. And I like that I have an instrument that actually can be very in the moment responsive, even if I'm in my closet recording, which I'm doing right now. I mean, the only other voiceover thing I've done outside of that has been video games, where you wear like motion capture suit and, you're wearing a helmet with a camera in your face and all that. And that also can be taxing. Those days are sort of long and they're very physical. So if you have access to, not clenching down in the throat and access to active breath continually, you're going to have much more stamina given what's being asked of you every moment.
Any favorite video game credits that we should tell the dear listeners about?
I mean, there's only even one that I know of, which is it's a Rockstar game, Diamond Casino, and I play the manager of the casino. But that was I did that back in like 2019, and I've done a bunch of other ones.
Rockstar's a big name.
Yeah, I've done some other ones since then, but I've never known the name of the game. I've never known the script. Sometimes I'm playing characters with names. Sometimes I'm playing background characters who are responding to explosions and things. So I don't ever really know what they are, and I just work and then leave and get paid, and it's lovely.
Yeah, the informational lockdown around that industry is particularly high.
Yes, very
levels and levels and levels of NDAs and stuff like that.
So many. Yep.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to talk about, like talking about advertisements. Like you are beholden to a point of view that is not necessarily your own. And so if this work is about training, quote unquote authenticity, which means response to present information and not playing your rehearsal, right? That's so much about what this work can be. Then, I'm curious, Scott, do you think is there kind of a paradox there? Like, how do we approach something that needs to be as rigorous as a commercial voiceover with release, gathering present information? What's your sense about that?
I don't know. Katie, what do you think?
Yeah, because the moment that you're alive to is kind of, you're just with yourself. You're not necessarily really with someone. But I guess imagine if the text seems like it's talking to someone, then maybe you just can imagine and see and sense that person that you would be communicating with. That might be one way in. But it reminds me a lot of the attention models that we teach, which I had never really thought about before. And when I first heard that, I was like, oh my God, that seems revolutionary in terms of expression. And I thought, right, so if I am in anything, voiceover or auditioning for anything, if I'm trying to be careful to, not, well, it would essentially be not making a choice, which I don't think, sometimes it's like, well, I don't know exactly what to do. I don't know what they're looking for, so I'll just do nothing instead of doing the thing that is really a strong point of view, whether it be right or wrong. If it's really strong, then someone can at least go, I definitely disagree with that person, or I definitely agree with that person. So even that knowledge, if I'm looking at a voiceover text, is to say, make it clear and make it really strong so that anyone listening would say that person believes what they're talking about. I either like it or I don't, but I at least know what they think about it.
Yeah, I think actors encounter that doing on-camera auditions too, because we're taught make it smaller, make it smaller, make it smaller.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
And I remember one of our teachers in a camera class, James Caleri at NYU. He was like, after a take, he'd be like, how'd that go? How'd that go? Little boring, right? Little boring. And we would all get it. And the whole class would be like, yep, yeah, that was a little boring. Because you think you have to shrink somehow. But like the bigger choice, I don't want to say the bigger choice is better, because that's not necessarily true. But if we lose your point of view, then it all kind of becomes gray and we don't know what to pay attention to. So at least if there is a big choice, if there is a clear point of view, at least we have something to relate to and make a decision about.
Yeah. I had a teacher once who said, in relationship to, I guess, on camera work, that truth does not know size. I think if you're true, or somehow the expression is true to this moment, and of course, there's some kind of understanding about that particular medium versus this particular medium, and they do have certain kinds of requirements, yes. But underneath that, I think trusting, again, that your relationship to the text can be really expressed uniquely through you. It can reveal a lot about you if you're willing to go there.
Yeah, that's where I think navigation really helps, at least as kind of a clue to begin the experience, So truth, what is truth, right? So we can say, well, if we're going to define truth as specificity, and we're going to define specificity as clear point of view, like I know what you care about, or, I know what to pay attention to in the sentence, I want the blue shirt. I know to pay attention to the color, as opposed to I want the blue shirt, to pay attention to the garment, then that's a kind of truth directionally and navigationally, right? Which is really just clarity. And naturalism is the graveyard for point of view. It has been over in my experience. The minute someone says, "Yes, be more natural," or be smaller, or throw it away, or these words that mean that don't mean what they say really. When someone says "be more natural," they actually mean be more familiar to my eyes and ears. And what more familiar is, when you hear people talking in the hallway, is clear points of view, is extreme, right, unpredictable musicality. So when we think of natural throwing it away as nothing, that's where everything goes away. So does just moving my musicality, just having a clear point of view, make it authentic and true? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. And on some level, I don't really care, because it's not about, as the viewer, it's not about your experience as the actor. It's about my experience. So I just need enough information to actually be released into an experience, right? And so if you don't give me that information, now I'm in paralysis, because I don't know what is going on. I'm confused, a little defensive. And don't know my relationship to the moment. So it's interesting, right? You're talking about Katie, right? I thought about that in a sense of point of view, and we use this word truth a lot, and getting kind of like, what is that? Because I think it can be, again, talking about navigation versus judgment. Like now we're going to, we can slowly slide into that conversation. Like, I know your truth. Well, you say that, but I observed this. So who's telling the truth here? And this, I find this with parenting all the time. It's like we have these conversations around, are you telling the truth? Or we want to have the conversation, and my kids want to have the conversation, but I try as much as possible to steer away from that language and those kinds of conversations, and just talk about data in the room. And now what are we going to do? Now, what are we going to do about it? Like, okay, I saw this, you saw that, you observed it. It's like, yeah, you're making an argument, but you know really that that's not accurate what you're talking about right now. I know you're trying to make that argument because you don't want to deal with the consequences that you think will come. But there's a difference. Like, what's really going on here? Is that what's really going on? You're trying to evade the consequences? Because we can have a conversation about that. Right? About the perception of there's going to be consequences if certain things go certain ways. If that's what's happening in the room, let's really talk about that. Not pretend like we're talking about this other thing about the event when your mind's eye is really just on contouring the language so the consequences will go one way or the other. Right? I mean, again, in politics, like it's everywhere. Like, what are we really talking about here? Okay, I'll stop. That's a massive tangent. Sorry.
Stay tuned, fair listener. All of these threads will be picked up at another time.
We love a tangent.
I think that's probably, we love a tangent here at MVM. I think that's probably a good place to leave it. Katie, it's been such a pleasure talking to you. How are your palms? Are they still sweaty, or have you moved on?
They've just now calmed down. My heart is warm, of course, because I love talking to both of you. So thanks so much for having me.
So, Katie, wait a second. That last hour or so is your nervous voice?
Maybe. I don't
know. No way. There's no way. That was like very grounded.
Well, it's probably because
I felt like very grounded.
I'm really trying to calm myself here in my closet. I'm still sweating, but it's mostly because it's just hot in here.
Listeners, if you have a question for us and you want to reach us, please reach out. Oh gosh, I meant to check this beforehand. I believe the email address is activebreath@millervoicemethod.com. I should know. I fought a long battle to try and change it to something, and I think that's it. It'll be in the show notes. Apologies if I'm wrong about that. We have a couple of things coming up that we'd love to just mention. The MVM Gym is running. That's part of the Academy. So Tuesday evenings, 7:30 to 8:30 p.m. Eastern, and Saturday mornings, 11 a.m. to noon Eastern time. These are 1 hour live Zoom classes where you meet with a teacher and they will guide you through some exercises. They are designed to be accessible to MVM practitioners of all levels, including brand new beginners. If you want to come by and try out what we're doing. You always have access to the presence training through our website, millervoicemethod.com, as well. These video guided workouts that can be a great way to learn new skills and practice. And we have a workshop coming up in May 15th, 16th, 17th. Weekend workshop with me and Scott. I think Katie might also be there.
I plan on being there, yes.
All of that.
I plan.
Yes, can't wait to have you in the room for that.
Yep.
So again, check out millervoicemethod.com, get your spot there. Scott, you have a couple of trips coming up that you wanted to talk about.
Yes, I am going to Leicester, England for an empathy in healthcare workshop. It's actually Educating for Empathy in Healthcare is the official name, between the 20th of April and the 22nd. And basically, I went to one of these conferences in September, and there's a global. I thought it was just in the United States where they sense that this doctor-patient, medical profession-patient relationship communication, there's a gap in there. But going to these conferences, it's like it's a worldwide epidemic. It's everywhere. These empathy centers are all across the world, connected with medical schools, trying to train doctors in enhanced communication. And now they have a lot of data. Like it's kind of self-evident, right? If the person, if the expert in the room is not so great at communication skills, that there would be diminishing health results, right? Healthcare results seem self-evident, but now they have a lot of data and a lot of studies to show just that. So there's, in this conference I'll be going to, we'll be surrounded by other practitioners, and we're going to share our research and our work and see how it can be helpful in this arena. And then later in a week later, I'll be going to Finland, Helsinki. We'll be running a scene integration workshop for 3 days, an on-camera workshop, basics for 3 days, and a advanced on-camera workshop for 3 days. between the 4th and the 14th of May. So if you're in that neck of the world, that's a leap. And then a few other things. Maybe I'll mention the next podcast as it becomes a little bit more relevant.
I can't wait for the episode on healthcare and communication. I think that's going to be really fascinating.
Yeah.
All right, friends. I think that's a great way to place to leave it for today. Thank you again, Katie, so much for joining us. It's been such a treat to chat with you.
Absolutely. Thank you both so much.
Thanks, Katie.
Thanks for your insight as always, Scott.
Thanks for providing this space, Kyle. And thanks for sharing very, vulnerably your experience on stage.
Yeah. Always happy to talk about the gory details, just sort of scanning back in my mind to be like, did I say anything that's going to get me in trouble? I don't think so. I think we're probably clean, but I'll let you know. If I'm not on the next podcast, it's because I've been taken out by the theater makers.
No.